Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Monday download. Let's jump in today. I've got an excellent shout out today I want to share with everybody. Randy Wells, a real estate agent with Windermere, has a transaction that's been approved, but which is great. But what Randy did in this situation is he was able to keep a buyer. He actually strategized with the buyer. We got on the phone with him. We did some conference calls with him and the buyer's agents. And basically what happened is, because of the way the banks were countering back on the different loans, we had to resubmit the file, which was going to create obviously more wait time. And in order to keep the buyer on board, we restructured the transaction. And the bottom line is Randy's buyer ended up getting about $43,000 better deal on the property. And so it was great for the buyer, works for the seller, and the bank obviously approved it. So way to go, everybody, for strategy in that, and Randy for getting everybody involved so that we could make this work. Let's talk a little bit about some new insights in the last couple weeks that we have run into here at Alliance, just in regard to short sale time frames. Many of you get notes through our note system that tell you the file is being submitted to the investor for review, and sometimes when we're following up in a few days, we'll realize, well, it hasn't been submitted yet, and now a week's gone by and it hasn't been submitted, and sometimes even 2 weeks, and it hasn't actually been submitted to the investor, even though they said, I'm submitting it to the investor. And it just has created a lot of confusion and frustration on our part, on your part, buyers' parts. You know, the buyer sees notes or hears from you that the file is being submitted to the investor for review, and a week and a half later, we still don't have any confirmation that the investor is reviewing it or that it's even been sent to them. And so we dug down, drilled down, found out some information that these big investors, what's happening at the lender level is these short sales are being bundled and sent over to these big investors in huge bundles. So what will happen is the negotiator will look everything over, it'll fit into the guidelines, but the investor has to give final approval. And so what will happen is they'll throw it into the bundle, and it could be pretty quick that it gets over to the investor, depending on how big that bundle is and if they're on the back end of that. Maybe it hits what number it needs, and then they send it over. But they could submit it into queue to be sent over to the investor, and it could be a week or more before it actually goes to the investor, and then there's the processing time. And so that is one of the reasons that we're seeing kind of a back-end delay. We'll have a negotiator that actually gets us an answer, but before they can give us an approval letter, it has to go through the investor. So one of the things that we're going to start doing, and that you as the listing agent can do to position the parties in the transaction, is when the negotiator says I'm submitting it to the investor, is just position them that might be a week or two before the investor actually gets it to review it, and then it's going to be in their queue for a little while. So don't think, oh, submission to investor means we should have an answer in a week. It's not always the case. Obviously, on every transaction, it's not the same. But just be aware that that's kind of another piece that we've recently uncovered in how the banks are working with investors and what is slowing things down. Let's talk a little bit about Equator. I got a little Equator update for you. As you know, that transition has been going now for months, and we're getting files coming back to us, approvals or counters, a lot of counters. And really what we're seeing from Bank of America in their Equator system is that so far every single file has been countered back with seller contribution of funds and a promissory note. Almost as if that's their standard course of action, that every single short sale gets countered back with those two items. So what does that mean? A lot of sellers are not accepting that. A lot of sellers are saying, hey, I don't have any money to bring to closing, so I can't do this. Just be aware that that's part of what we're seeing as protocol, and it's not like the bank has said, oh yeah, this is our protocol, we're doing this on everything, but we're just seeing numbers of them coming back the same way, and we're starting to deduce that maybe that's how Bank of America is, their first response is to counter with those items. So it adds some time for us to go back and forth with the bank, resubmissions sometimes. Escalations of Equator files are highly challenging. So anyway, just be aware of those items, that just because the bank is countering us back doesn't mean that we're going to be able to get an acceptance that we can actually close on. So positioning your buyer is really important. Some more news in the Equator world is that GMAC is now using Equator. So Equator, kind of third-party entity, used to be REO Trans that Bank of America bought and uses for their transactions. Now GMAC is utilizing the Equator system for their transactions. They're doing it a little different. I'm not going to go into details because it really doesn't affect you too much, more on our back end, but just be aware that the Equator system is being utilized for GMAC, and at this point we don't have to have seller logins or anything, but that may come. But so that's kind of where we are with their Equator system. The last thing I want to mention is, and I mentioned it last week too, was the call that we did with Todd Sullivan on BPOs. And we felt like this call was so important and gave us really an additional level to the BPO factor, and such an important level to the BPO factor that we're actually going to be putting it down onto a CD and sending it out to everybody in our network. It is available online, so if you don't want to wait, if you have an offer in and you're going to be expecting a BPO shortly, don't wait for us to get it down on CD. Jump on the Insider Network and listen to it. It's probably about 45-50 minutes, and it is highly valuable. It really has, as Jessica said, it's creating the ability for you to take a 4-bedroom 2-bath and turn it into a 2-bedroom 1-bath simply by how you look at it through the eyes of a BPO agent. And it's going to give you some critical strategies on working with the BPO agent and helping them do their job correctly. So that's all I have for you this week. If you have questions or need strategy, send me an email, call into the office, we'll get on the phone and continue to find great success in our short sales. Thanks everybody, and we will talk to you very soon. Bye.